so I promise there's going to be actual work done in this video, but let's go over the things in the drag car that need to be changed, swapped over, and yada yada. So first thing we're going to start with is the hood. This thing is a shit show. We used this hood because the exhaust hole in the other one was in the wrong spot and we needed some ventilation. This hood was actually made for a car 8 years ago. The body work on it wasn't great, as you can tell, but we've made do with it. But it's time for a new hood. I have a couple of hoods that we're gonna mess around with. Luckily, because I can fabricate my own stuff, where the up pipe or down pipe, if you will, can be changed, so we're not worried about that. So the hood is the first thing, one of the things that we're going to be changing. For here, there's quite a bit of things that I want to change, which they worked, but I don't want them to be this way anymore. We'll get to the intercooler system in a minute. The first thing is our fuel line. So we have not the greatest fuel line setup here. So going to the regulator, we've got proper AN line. Our return is proper line, but our feed it's sketchy. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it, it's sketchy. I mean, those are barb fittings, so those would be fine, but like this is sketchy. It doesn't fit right, but it was kind of thrown together just so we could get the thing going. So that's something that's 100% gonna get changed. I'm not a fan of that. We're gonna change that. Next thing we're going to change is we have our vacuum manifold here. Now, there's nothing wrong with the vacuum manifold itself. It's just I'm not a fan of how it's set up. Now, we have a barb on the intake manifold. I'm going to change this to an AN fitting so that we can run an actual AN line, the proper size, to this. We'll relocate this somewhere that's a little more manageable. I might even put it inside the car, and I'll get to that when we go to the inside as to why I want to do that. The puke tank is fine. I'm okay with that. The coolant overflow tank, we'll put it in a different spot, but I'm okay with that. I do not like any of this whole situation here. Everything is jammed in between everything. I don't like it, but it was done that way just to get this thing up and running, like most of this stuff. So what I will be doing is getting a different hose, and we'll relocate this forward and up so that it's in, you know, the right spot. And there's also room for the pressure sensor that's back here to actually fit and not be, you know, like that. And then the major thing under here that needs to be changed is the wiring. So the original harness that we made to get this thing running was done beautifully. It was great, had no issues. But anybody that does product development will know that as you add stuff gets messier. And this harness is no exception. It's gotten to be a bit of a mess. It's not horrible. I'm just not a fan of it. The way the ground's set up, it's just not the way I want it. And I have stuff to make the harness better, but I'm going to make the harness again from scratch. Just do it again, fresh wire, because a lot of stuff inside the car is going to change, which means the harness stuff has to change too. You can see back here where I've had to rip it apart and add stuff. It's not great. So there's that. Boost control. Not switching to CO2 yet, but I am going to be changing the way that we do boost control, which we'll get into that when we get into it. We have our back pressure sensor is there. I have a change for that, which we'll get to in a minute. Again, intercooler stuff is going to change. The puke tank, again, is great, but we need somewhere to dump that line. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a second vent tank, like a vent catch, in the back of the car and run that line back to that, so that if this vents out any oil vapor, it goes into that before it goes out of a filter to the outside of the car. So we have those changes. We have the ABS sensors hooked up, but they're not working, so that's going to be changed. That's not a big deal. There's no clutch slipper in here right now. I have a new clutch slipper that we need to put in it, so that's going to change. So that's pretty much everything under here that's going to get changed. The radiator setup, it's working great. We're going to keep that. The battery location works great. I'll just make an actual, you know, enclosure for it so it's not just clamped to the front of the car. It doesn't move, but, you know, it could be better. So that's everything under here. Actually, the inside of the car doesn't really matter because we're changing to a different chassis with a roll cage. But we plan on keeping either this NRG wheel, or I actually have another wheel that I bought that I really like. It just doesn't have the buttons included, but I can add them. So we have our Nano Pro, we have our input expander. So the wiring in here is the biggest mess because adding things and changing things like that requires a lot of rewiring, and it's turned into a bit of a mess. I've gotten lazy with hooking stuff up, and you know, it is what it is. So we're actually switching to a new power distribution system. Grab that. It's called a VOD switch panel power system. So we've got buttons, and it's all encased in one unit, loads of amps. It's got ground distribution on the back, power distribution, a button panel. That's what we're going to be using. It's going to clean up a lot of stuff, get rid of relay boxes, and it's expandable. So that's going to fix a lot of that, which with doing that, we can actually make it look nice in here. It's functional right now, but it doesn't look great. It's not a great place to be. Shifter, we're keeping. This thing is sick. There's no slop in it at all. Shifts feel absolutely fantastic. That is staying. So the intercooler, I had mentioned we were going to talk about that. So the tank is under here. We're going to use the same tank and pump system, but the intercooler location is going to change. And the reason for that is I don't like how limited my access is to the intercooler itself. We had a coupler pop off in there, and it was a bitch. It was an absolute pain in the ass to take the dash out. As cool as it is to have it in here, it's just not working for the whole everything needs to be really accessible thing. So the intercooler is going to be moved back into the engine bay. I have to figure out where, but there's room on top of this engine. So I might just throw it back on top of the engine, if I'm honest. If not back on top of the engine, then I'll figure something out. There's not a whole lot of space, but there is space up here behind the front bumper in front of the battery that we can put it, so it's going to get moved. I want easier access. I want to reduce the amount of piping. So that's the deal with the intercooler. This seat is not our race seat. I will show you that in a minute. But yeah, so those are the things that we're going to change. The input expander, we have a ton of inputs left on it that we can use. So I have some additional sensors we're going to put on. I have distribution blocks and things like that. So if you're wondering where the FT unit is for in here, I use that to set up other cars, confirm they're working, and then put their FT units in. So that's where that is. An ignition switch. I'm actually going to get the factory button to work. I saw Amelia Hartford. They got their 400Z to work in their drag car, their push button. I was like, oh, that's neat. I should probably do that. So that's what we're going to do. It'll still have, you know, an ignition cut switch. You can actually hear everything still turns on. It'll still have an ignition cut switch and all that stuff, but I'll have the push button to actuate the starter and all that good stuff. I could put the starter on here, but I just think a push button starter would just be really cool. So those are the things that are going to happen with this car. All right, so gonna start on this thing. We're gonna get the wheels off. We're going to get the brakes off so that the thing actually moves. I'm gonna put these wheels back on to roll it around. I'm gonna put it on without any brakes on it, no discs. Again, just so it can roll around. While I have it up, we'll take the axles out, get all the fluids out of this thing, unbolt everything under the car that we can, and then we'll start stripping the front of it, and we'll go from there. So the goal is to get this thing so that I can push it in and out, so that it's not stuck on my lift until, you know, I drag it out of here. And then we'll focus, after we can get it rolling, we'll focus on getting it prepped for everything that needs to get changed over. All right, so our stuck brakes are the rear ones. This one isn't horrible, it kind of moves. This one over here is completely locked up. You can actually see where it's dragging when we were dragging it. So brake lines, I didn't realize it's still braided, so that's nice. We're just gonna take the caliper off for now to get the rotor out. I got some 5mm spacers we'll put there to put the wheels back on it, and that'll get us rolling around. I need to see if I can find some information on the spring rates for these coilovers. And all of these use spline drives lugs, except for this one, which you have to use a thin wall socket to get off. And my impact adapter just snapped in half, so I have to go get a new one of those. But yeah, the coilovers, they're HKSs. I got to get some information on them. They don't seem like they're leaking or anything, so I might keep them. Might. Jesus, that is loud. Yeah, I might keep them if I can get some information on them. So yeah, the knuckle, hub, and control arm are all going to get replaced because the knuckles on the other car have extended studs on them for the slicks, and I don't want to have to do that again. I also don't know what condition these bearings are in. So it did have full oil in it, the blackest oil ever. So like that came out of a car after several dyno runs and about 200 miles driving, and that came out of this thing, which I don't know when the oil was changed on it, but it's black. It's blacker than that. So the subframe is a little rusty, but it's not rotting, so I'm just gonna clean it really good. We'll give it a coat of paint when I have the engine and trans out, but I gotta drain the transmission next, and then I don't know if this has coolant in it. We will find out. So that's kind of where we're at. So I gotta come under here, undo that mount. I gotta get the axle out, take those rear rotors off, take this front rotor off. This isn't binding yet, but just because I don't know when I'm gonna get to putting the new stuff in, I wanna get that taken care of. So that's where we're at. All right, rotors are off, wheels are on there, free spinning. I have to remember there's no e-brake anymore. So that's the case on both of these. And then up front, next up, we got to get this axle out after I drain the gear oil out of it. It has these camber bolts in here that aren't looking too healthy. So I'll have to see what's up with that. But yeah, I want to get these axles out of here, and then once I get the axles out, do the lower engine mount, undo the downpipe from the rest of the exhaust, and then that's everything underneath the car, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so it's coolant in it and gear oil. This axle's out. Now I just gotta go get an adapter, get this wheel off so we can get that axle out. And we're scooting along here. Thinking I might actually be able to take the engine out of this thing today. Bye-bye, bumper. Bye-bye, fender. All right, so front end is all gone. Lights are all gone. This wheel's off, obviously, brakes. Now we're gonna try to get this axle out. We're gonna see if it comes out without taking the carrier bracket off, because it's just a couple more bolts less we'd have to do. If it is not, we'll have to take the brackets off, and it will be what it will be. We are actually not far off from yanking this engine out, thanks to the race cars not having a bajillion things plugged in everywhere. So we had to take the whole bracket out, but that axle's out. So what I'm gonna do now is put both sides halfway back together, loosely bolt them together, put the calipers so they're loosely bolted on. That way we can put the tires on, and that makes this thing back into a roller, which is what we want. And I forgot that I did this many, many years ago. AC delete. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. That's crazy. I did that a long time ago. Actual AC delete. Huh. All right, so lower mount is out. I took off the frame wheel extensions. We don't need those. It's one less thing in the way. Get rid of the windshield washer sprayer. You'll notice that fender is off and that fender is not. That door I could open enough to get the fender off. This door I cannot open enough, so we'll get that off after. Clearly still draining coolant. So I'm gonna wait until that is done draining to take the radiator out. And once the radiator is out, it's ready to come out. Oh, the exhaust is also disconnected. All right, so everything is unhooked. Fuel line's unhooked. Still coolant coming out of it, so we're gonna let that keep going. The only thing that's holding this engine in is that mount there, that mount there. So as soon as the coolant is more drained out, so don't spill it everywhere, we'll hook this thing up to the hoist and yank it out of here and put it off to the side. So, big part of this process already almost done. All right, we got the car back outside. We got the engine ready to come out, all hooked up. I need to have like an engine disassembly party. We got that engine, which we don't know the condition of. We got that engine over there, which I think is blown up. Got this engine over here, which it ran, but you know. And then that engine over there has to come apart because I need stuff out of it for that car. But anyway, this is about to come out, and then we do need to get the brake master cylinder out, and we gotta do the interior stuff. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna save the interior stuff until we get the drag car completely disassembled. So, yeah. All right, and that's out. Cool. Oh, yeah, I forgot. There's a catalytic converter on that. Okay. So, next order of business is to go through the engine bay, remove everything we don't need. This brake master cylinder we're going to take out just because it's got stuff in the fluid and we don't know if that's contaminated the master cylinder itself. We're going to be changing the way that the brake lines are set up, so that is going to come out. We need to take that out because this is actually stuck in here. Instead of just changing the insert, we'll just take the whole mount out and we'll use the one from the other car. The heat exchanger hoses are going to come out because we don't need them. Brake booster line, swap that out for the one from the other car. And then lower radiator support, I'm also going to swap out for the other car because it's in better shape than this one. This one is pretty beat up. So, cool. So like I said, we'll do the inside of the car after we get this one torn down, so that I can get everything kind of put aside, because that's when the construction stuff's gonna have to start to happen when we put this back together. So for the time being, I'm gonna take this fender off too. Take the fenders off, the fender off. The hood can come off now because we don't need to protect anything. Do the exhaust when I get back up in the air again. I forgot about that. All right, one big step done.